The Wall Street Journal is reporting the Trump gunman flew a drone over the rally site hours before the attempted assassination. I'm going to pause right now and just say that's impossible. That is impossible. I don't know. Modern drones won't even fly in secure zones. I don't know how this is possible. If you buy a modern consumer-grade drone and you turn it on, it will tell you before you can fly it, you have to download the map, which tells you where you can and cannot fly. It tracks no-fly zones, FAA rules and regulations. After you download it, if you were anywhere near anything like this, it says cannot take off. Now, it's possible. He had a really old drone from 10 years ago or something that he was flying, but this makes literally no sense outside of the technological hurdles. They allowed a drone to fly overhead and they didn't do anything about it. Okay, that's it. I don't see how anyone at any point could say anything other than inside job. Hands down, look. In 2011 at Occupy, I'm flying one of the first commercial grade drones and we hacked it to live broadcast using the software development kit. We pulled the data from the device while it's in the air and sent it to a laptop computer and then captured the video feed and broadcast it on the internet. For this, we ended up getting a bunch of attention. I ended up actually consulting with the university and the government on drone regulations and rules. And this is impossible. They let someone fly a drone. Let me tell you why it's impossible. The reason why we have the restrictions on drones, look at what's going on in Ukraine. They strap a very small explosive to a drone. The idea that they would allow a drone to fly anywhere near a presidential rally without putting in any kind of override is impossible. They let this happen. I don't get it.
Yeah, a 20-year-old shouldn't outsmart the national security state, but that's the official story that we're kind of being told to by the corporate media, that he somehow was able to get his hands on transmitters, also have explosives, also be able to wipe his phone. Is this guy like a tech genius? Is he the smartest man that's able to beat out the NSA spying on every little single thing you do? I don't think so.
Don't forget, he can be on a sloped roof, too.
Yes.
I mean, he's able to do that.
That's a lot of skills.
He's got anti-gravity boots,
This means that we're going to have to go and look at all of the other Trump rallies to determine when they're allowing flights over the president, which is nuts. But this implies that at a deeper federal level, it wasn't just the Secret Service who said, whoops, there's no guy on that roof. It is the FAA allowing drones to fly over it. I'm gonna pause and say this must be an old school drone pre FAA lockdowns. So I mean, it's nuts to me because look, even 10 years ago, they updated the drones. I'm talking 2014 and 15. All the drones got major updates that they could not fly because they were given FAA digital maps internally, which connected to their GPS, which would block them from flying in certain areas.
They also transmit their position too.
Yes,
a lot of the modern ones.
So the FAA did not put up a no-fly zone to restrict drone flight. The Secret Service and local law enforcement allowed a guy to launch a drone. They say the use of the drone was just one way in which authorities have said crooks planned his attack. How is this possible?
Could it have been the day before?
It says hours before.
Yeah. Tim, can I ask a question on this? Because I don't know.
This is right before the event.
I don't know anything about drones at all, really, because I don't have one. But could he have pre-programmed it to launch from wherever I am, fly in a certain direction, a certain amount of space, and then come back? Like the drone was never really referencing that.
That's not only if it's an older drone from like 2013, or maybe he hacked it, I guess. And that's the level of sophistication that I think I would be surprised by. Look.
He's an expert bomb maker.
If you right,
he's the most skilled
I mean, what is this? A 20-year-old with explosive remote triggers, and drones that seemingly bypass. And no, I mean, some people have chatted saying that it's the FAA had no fly zone over there, and I'm like, what? How? Look, go to Best Buy, buy a consumer grade drone. It will not fly unless you connect it to the internet for an update first, so it can track FAA no fly zones.
The Secret Service denied a FOIA request from America First Legal today. They're asking for information like the identities of the Secret Service agents, all kinds of details about what's going on. And the Secret Service basically said, like, there's no urgency. You don't need this information. And I can understand kind of to be expected, right? They're a federal agency that's in the middle of something. They're still getting their story together. On the other hand, I think it is amazing that we are still almost a week out from this, and really the government has not been able to even present something that they could like, not even a story that we all would believe is a lie or a cover-up. They're saying nothing, and they're denying all requests for information.
It's possible, as people are chatting, he built his own drone. Absolutely. And so the narrative is then the dude built explosives with remote triggers and he built his own drone. He flew his own custom-built drone at a presidential rally in front of law enforcement and no one did anything. Dude, I'm sorry. If a custom-built drone is flying around a presidential rally, you'd think they'd stop it. They'd say, we're going to figure out the source of this. Mr. President, do not go out on stage. We had a drone flying overhead and we can't identify it where it's coming from. I'm sorry, dude. This is nuts. This is just, they're not getting this one through on the story of some dumb 20-year-old figured this one out.
Yeah.
There's no way some dumb 20-year-old or some crazy kid who apparently, what was he in a BlackRock commercial? Is that true?
That is true.
They filmed at his high school, right?
He was like a extra kind of. He was in the background.
And that's an aside. That's an aside.
Yeah.
But some 20-year-old kid with remote triggers, how do you make those? Where'd you get them from?
Well, there's the story too about the second cell phone they found that has like, a handful of contacts, and now the FBI or whoever it's going through and trying to make contact with each one of those people. I mean, the initial story was this kid barely existed, right? He has no social media history. He has no friends, and he never talked about anything, and we don't know anything about him. And slowly we actually are getting details. He does clearly has someone in his phone book. He was on that social media site saying something. I saw this report the other day that he told his boss that he needed the next day off because he needed July 13th off because he had something to do. I mean, people know this person, and this idea that he was able to do all of these things as like a lone wolf becomes increasingly more sketchy the longer the DHS and Secret Service keep it a mystery.
As his parents were calling the police hours beforehand, saying that they were concerned about the whereabouts and what their son is doing.
Yeah.
It was at like 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah, but there was many reports. There was many different things that they missed clearly here, and it really makes you kind of wonder, with the FBI going after pro-lifers, going after PTA meetings, where their priorities are at. Because if someone's buying transmitters, if someone's buying specific drone tech that allows you to evade a lot of the laws, rules, and regulations, especially with just how weaponized they have become in Ukraine, these set off certain red flags. These set off certain alarms that, especially if someone is troubled, if someone is a loner, if someone is being bullied, automatically, if you're the national security state, you should have a sort of an algorithm saying, yeah, the likelihood of this guy, especially with his mental health issues, maybe he was even on SSRIs. You could even check the prescription data on that automatically. Top of the list. Let's just keep an eye on him. But they don't do that. They do a dragnet surveillance state that, of course, spies on your private wiener pictures.
Remember, schools have software in place that does this. That's how they caught the kid in Wisconsin, based on his search history, and then it set off all red flags. He ended up having a manifesto and all this kind of stuff. And like you said, if you buy certain things from Amazon, they may be innocuous, but you combine them, there is a notice that gets sent out. I mean, look at all the times they've basically set up honeypots for those guys that are buying those credit card things, those punch out things, and then all of a sudden everyone gets arrested. They're watching all that stuff.
Let's play Occam's razor, right? In the absence of evidence, the solution that makes the least amount of assumptions tends to be correct. What if I were to say that a 20-year-old kid who donated Democrat, was a registered Republican, had a grudge against Donald Trump, bypassed a Secret Service, local law enforcement, flew a drone, had explosives and remote detonators, and was able to successfully get off a few shots against President Trump, striking him in the ear? There are so many holes in that statement. In order to get to that point, you have to ask 1,000,001 questions. To be literal, you need to ask a question for every single instance, and each of those questions asks another 10. We start with, how did he bring a rangefinder and use it at a presidential rally spotted by law enforcement without any questioning? Okay, we'll start there. Law enforcement made all of them, every single one who saw him, because it was more than one, made a mistake. Okay, next up. An hour later, he was spotted again utilizing this rangefinder. He flew a drone. All of the Secret Service and local law enforcement forgot their policy on drone usage at presidential events at that moment. Instantly, they had amnesia. I'm sorry, there's too many questions that can't be answered. The simple solution no longer becomes a crazed 20-year-old with a custom drone with GPS spoofing to bypass FAA restrictions, or the FAA didn't put up a no-fly zone. He was able to fly this hours in advance. He had explosives and remote triggers. The Secret Service didn't secure the building, didn't put up a block to break line of sight. The police encountered him numerous times and let him go. The simple solution right now is law enforcement was aware of his presence and allowed him to do it. That makes the least amount of assumptions in this regard. And then when you ask about the technology he utilized to get there, it's almost like, I'm sorry, if you're going to ask how a 20-year-old had a drone that could bypass these fly restrictions, or how he had explosive the remote triggers, there's too many assumptions to be made there. The simple solution is they were given to him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Blake, I wonder, since you were there at the rally, if you can tell us what police law enforcement presence looked like that day. I mean, was it, you've been to a lot of rallies. Was it the same as usual? Did it seem less? I mean, what's the insider's take?
From what I saw, it all seemed pretty much according to all the other rallies I've been. So I actually bypassed the turnoff a little bit, went through, tried to get in the easiest way. That was blocked off. And so I had to backtrack a little bit. It was tough to get to the parking, but I did not really spend much time outside the venue. Now, I approached the venue from the south. That's where the parking was. They had a lot of vendors. It was very typical. I did notice, because this was at a small airfield adjacent to it, and I did notice a few buildings like hangars and stuff like that, but I didn't feel like it was unsafe. When you went through the scanning, the magnetometers at the beginning, the only thing that was different is that the Secret Service was doing all of the searching. Now, normally at these rallies is that the TSA will do the initial screening of your bag, and then the Secret Service will man the magnetometers and then do the wanding. But at this one, the Secret Service was also doing the searching of the bag, and I thought it was better because they actually searched my boots, which I've never had done at a rally before. So in my mind, the initial screening getting into the venue was even better than ever.
It was more thorough.
Absolutely, yeah. So, and I don't know if that was just a change, but then when I flew out of Pittsburgh the next day, 2.5 hour wait at the TSA screening. So Pittsburgh Airport, closest one where you'd have a lot of TSA agents. I think they've got something going on there. That might be why there were no TSA agents at this rally. I have no real reason for that. So then once I'm in the venue and I got there, as soon as they opened it up to the public, everything that I saw was basically according to plan. I didn't see anything that was really deficient compared to other rallies. Not at all.
That's interesting. It is interesting to me that you're saying Secret Service was doing a job they don't normally do. Again, I would have a similar instinct to you. This makes it safer. Mm-hmm. This means it's more thorough. I'm also thinking about, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has now been granted Secret Service protection, mm-hmm. but we're within that 120-day window where every major political candidate is supposed to have Secret Service protection. Now, of course, it's unusual because we have President Trump, who already had it, and Biden, who's, of course, already protected by the Secret Service. But in some ways, I wonder if it could have, I think if I were in your position, I would have written it off as like, oh, we're just getting closer to the election. They're just being more cautious.
Yeah, it was just something I noticed, and I didn't assign any reason to it. But honestly, they checked to make sure there was nothing in my boots, and that's never happened before.
Was there anything off? Was there anything else strange about that event or that day to you?
Nothing at all.
Wow.
Nothing at all. I mean, and this is the standard type of setup that they've had for outdoor rallies. So even the setup was very similar. You've got the standard stage. The ramp goes up to, it's either on the left or right. It's never straight to the bleachers. You've got the bleachers in the back, which is the backdrop where all the people that you see when you're looking at those standard, media television feeds that are shooting directly at the president, showing people in the background. Then you had the flanking bleachers on either side with the jumbotrons above it. So maybe for an outdoor rally, to have the two jumbotrons, they were both pretty large, so it seemed like maybe that was a little bit different. Sometimes they only have one.
But they were putting up the illegal immigration chart.
Right, exactly.
Maybe it was just a different speech.
Correct.
Also, what you're saying means, I'm just thinking, the Secret Service would have searched Crooks's bag.
Crooks was not inside the venue.
He wasn't inside, okay.
Crooks is outside the venue. So this is something that came from completely outside the venue. He was not inside.
It never made sense to me.
Wait. He did get searched. They found the rangefinder and reported it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought he had been admitted to the rally.
They called him a suspicious individual.
But he was
the Secret Service called him over and said, we got to keep an eye on him.
He could have gone in, gone back out. I mean, we don't totally know what his path was around, because in the reality, I don't really understand why the second they were like, this guy seems to be raising red flags, they didn't have a plainclothes officer following him. I mean, if they did, they that person clearly.
Well, I wasn't aware that aware that he was searched. So you see, he was searched because
Yes.
That's what's being
honestly,
reported.
They found it and let him in with it.
well, why would he go into the venue? He wasn't in the venue. He wasn't in the secured perimeter of the inner venue.
He was in the secure venue, and he like locked eyes with the snipers, and then he left the secure area, and that's when the
went to his
Secret Service
car
lost
and then
control. Yeah.
Why would you even need a rangefinder? Why wouldn't you just pull up Google Earth and do it that way? I mean, does he really need to have like a range accurate to 10 yards for anything?
Well, if
shooting.
He's reporting for
if-
someone else.
You don't need that.
if
It's not a golf
that-
shot.
if they knew he was
6
going to be
iron
there,
versus 7.
if they knew he was going to be there, law enforcement knew he was going to be there, and law enforcement was helping him do this, then they'd give him the best tools possible to do whatever it is he was going to do.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they just tell him what the range was?
I suppose if they said we're going to put a mark on the roof and you can utilize that mark, here's what your range is going to be. Maybe, yeah.
Maybe he had to say. Maybe he didn't know for sure which spot he was going to be from.
Or yeah, he didn't know exactly where on the roof he would be. I have no idea. All I know is the idea that a 20-year-old flew a drone hours in advance, was spotted by law enforcement numerous times, was identified as a threat by Secret Service. They still allowed Trump to come out. That the Secret Service didn't secure the building. That Secret Service then lied and said that law enforcement was supposed to do it. Law enforcement then denied that. Secret Service says, well, it's because the roof was sloped. Makes no sense. Multiple local police and Secret Service were aware of him. He was a threat, and they allowed Trump to go out on stage. None of it makes sense.
Yeah,
There's only one explanation. They knew, I mean, let's just as simple as possible. They stood down. That's it. They stood down.
Somebody said, "Leave this kid alone." Like,
Perhaps.
let him operate, because you would think if first of all, it's bananas to me that you'd see. Oh, right. They made you check your boots. I was going to ask, did your boots set off the alarm?
No, I didn't.
Because they didn't make us check shoes here.
No.
Yeah.
I just want to push back on that a little bit. In aviation accidents, there's a theory called the Swiss cheese theory of how accidents happen. And it's when a number of different factors need to align to allow something to occur. Basically, there's built-in safety factors, but if something happens here that allows something to happen here, and they all line up perfectly, then a tragedy can happen. At this point, I feel that's what we're looking at. Now, so I think we're looking at humans are fallible, mistakes were made, and in addition, I believe there could be structural failures in the way that messages to the police get to the Secret Service. Is there a delay there? Because I understand that the Secret Service is going to have its own internal comms, and they're not going to share that with local. They're not going to share that with local police. So they've got to have somebody in the middle, man in the middle, who takes the local police reports and gives it out to the Secret Service. What is the delay of that process?
Secret
Maybe
Service,
that delay is too long.
Secret Service knew 10 minutes before Trump went out there was a threat identified.
Okay.
The normal procedure is to keep Trump in the holding room, which is what they have. And this is Dan Bongino, who worked Secret Service. This is his assessment. 2 minutes before shots were fired, people were screaming, "He's got a gun! He's got a gun!" And they knew.
But those were people outside the venue.
No, the sniper team was looking directly at him and allowed him to take the shots. Yes, they allowed him to take the shots against.
Not one of them said, "Get Trump off the stage."
Yes,
that's it.
That's all you
single
needed
sentence.
to do. They allowed him to go back up.
There's no simple solution there.
Yeah. No, you can't have wishful thinking here.
Well,
you can't give the government the benefit of the doubt.
I did see a report that there was originally supposed to be snipers from the local police on that roof.
And they've denied that and said that was a lie, and that local police was only for traffic control. And when has the Secret Service ever given up the principal vantage point to non-Secret Service? When the FBI raided Mar-a-Lago, and they had in their documents that use of lethal force was authorized and a contingency plan, the explanation was that Secret Service, the conflict there was Secret Service controls firearms in most areas when they're present, restricting other law enforcement agencies from brandishing arms, because if a shot is fired, they need to know who it was coming from, and they need that communication specifically within their branch of, or their division. In this instance, the idea then that Secret Service would say, there's a roof with direct line of sight to the president. What's normal protocol? Again, this is Dan Bongino, not me. Bongino says, if you can't secure the location, you break line of sight. He went on to explain how, in one instance, they had a vantage point they couldn't secure, so he said, buy fake snow and spray out the windows. That will turn any shot fired from this location into a random shot. Still bad, but better than a direct line of sight. In this instance, Secret Service did not secure a building with and if you look at the security perimeter, people are making the joke, they call it the security Pac-Man perimeter because it cuts out this one building, which makes no sense. So the police's own staging area, that's where they were staging. They encounter a guy numerous hours in advance. So I'm sorry, if you expect to believe that 3 hours in advance he was flying a drone, he was spotted by law enforcement with a rangefinder. He was identified as suspicious an hour in advance. 26 minutes prior, he was identified by local law enforcement and Secret Service. 10 minutes beforehand, they upgraded him to a threat. Still allowed him to come out. 2 minutes before the shot was fired, 2 minutes and 1 second, people are screaming he's got a gun at cops. He's on the roof. He's got a gun. In what reality? They never broke line of sight. They did not secure the rooftop. They claimed local. How could you argue that all of these things are accidents? Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.